The chime of the bell beckons us into a sacred time. Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Houston, which sits on land once roamed by the Karankawa tribe and Sana peoples. We acknowledge the suffering experienced by those driven from these lands and aspire that our acknowledgement will help revitalize our charge to widen love's circle. We greet all those who join us this morning, those here in our sanctuary, all of our online viewers, así como el creciente número de participantes bilingües que nos acompañan desde sus hogares. We hope those watching the live stream will fill out the online attendance form and refer to the many announcements in the online order of service. We ask those here in person to take a moment after this service and introduce yourself to someone you don't yet know. Now, please join Dr. Rock and guest pianist Joelle Thompson for our first hymn.
Good morning, everyone. I invite you. Oh, good morning. I'll wait for you to say good morning. I invite you to open your teal hymnals to number 1024. When the Spirit says do, please rise in body or in spirit and join together as we sing.
You got to do when the Spirit says do. May the Spirit, the breath that connects each to all, pass through us this morning. May it animate us, stir in our hearts, move our blood, and as it does, may we recall a lesson lifted up by Mary Bravebird. We are part of the earth, and the earth is in us. We are part of the earth is in us. We are all related, each living thing, breathing, a being built from stardust, a child of some long-dead luminous orb, brought to life through the miracle of water, earth, and sunlight. We are together this morning, so let us, as the Spirit encourages us, join together to lift up the best within each and recall our connections to all. Come, friends, let us worship together.
But the
Good morning. Please join me in the words for our congregational covenant you'll find in your order of service. Love is the spirit of our congregation. Service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek truth in love, and to encourage one another. Thus do we covenant.
Good morning. For our special music this morning, we have the string band, a beautiful song by Joyce Pauley called Keepers of the Earth. And as usual with the string band, we want you to sing along. So please sing along with us.
Its riches and its beauty.
We thank the string band. I really enjoy the Sundays when they're here. They're going to head out here in a minute because they blessed us at the first service with music as well. So they'll head out when the younger folk head out, which is just in a moment, right after I tell them that they're going to go do some really cool activities with Carol and with John. And we love you, and you're an important part of this church. And the adults are going to sing you out and with As You Go, and the words are actually in your order of service, so you can sing as the kids head out. We hear the words of the Native American proverb. Listen to the wind, it talks. Listen to the silence, it speaks. Listen to your heart, it knows. I invite you now into a quiet time, a time that some call meditation and others name prayer. Open your mind, open your heart, and join with me as I share this Native American prayer translated by Sans Arc Lakota chief Yellowhawk in 1887. O great Spirit, whose voice I hear in the winds, and whose breath gives life to all the world, hear me. I come before you, one of your children. I am small and weak. I need your strength and wisdom. Let me walk in beauty and make my eyes ever behold the red and purple sunset. Make my hands respect the things you have made, my ears sharp to hear your voice. Make me wise so that I may know the things you have taught my people, the lesson you have hidden in every leaf and rock. I seek strength not to be superior to my brothers, but to be able to fight my greatest enemy, myself. Make me ever ready to come to you with clean hands and straight eyes, so when life fades as a fading sunset, my spirit may come to you without shame. Amen. We pause now together to lift up that which sits heavy and light on our hearts. Jacqueline M. Willis Johnson, wife of longtime member Charles Johnson, passed away Tuesday afternoon surrounded by family and friends. Funeral services will be tomorrow at Sugarland Mortuary. Visitation will begin at 10 a.m., followed by the service and interment. If you'd like the address and more details, those can be found in your email newsletter. We hold Charles and his family in love as they mourn their loss. We are reminded that COVID is not a distant memory. Members of our congregation continue to succumb and recuperate. May they recover soon, and may we continue to take prudent precautions. We continue to hold those affected by the Smokehouse Creek fire in the Panhandle in our hearts. The largest fire on record in Texas, it has destroyed more than 1 million acres and killed 2 people. In the book, which we put in the foyer for you to put your joys and concerns as you enter the sanctuary, someone asks us to pray for all the patients and staff at LBJ Hospital if we don't stop the concrete crushing plant from being built. And I understand that's planned to be built right across the street from it. And as you can imagine what that will do to the air. It's been approved, but we're trying to stop it still, and you can sign a petition in Channing Hall. Someone asked, can you feel the world around you buzzing with life? It's exciting. We now turn to a practice inspired by African, indigenous, and pagan traditions. We say aloud or bring to mind those who we wish to be held by the loving embrace of this community. They are part of the great cloud of witness and memory, and we will, even if we do not know their names, hold them in our hearts. In this great cloud of witness and memory, amid this beloved community, we hear these names and hold them in our hearts. Let us remember the suffering and joy amid and among our community that we do not know. Each week, in the spirit of love, hope, and compassion, we enter into a time of silent prayer, meditation, or reflection. I invite you to listen to the silence as it speaks with these words from Chief White Eagle. Go forward with courage. When you are in doubt, be still and wait. When doubt no longer exists for you, then go forward with courage. So long as mist envelop you, be still. Be still until the sunlight pours through and dispels the mist, as it surely will. Then act with courage.
Each week, our morning offering is shared with an organization that shares our Unitarian Universalist values and through which we may live out our principles in the world. Today, our shared offering will help to support the initiative Save the Montrose Live Oaks. As per a Houston tax increment reinvestment zone, hundreds of mature live oaks and the shade canopy they provide are at risk. Live oaks are the #1 species for carbon sequestration and absorbing other pollutants. Just in Phase 1, from Allen Parkway to West Clay, medians will be narrowed by 10 feet, 5 feet on each side, destroying 57 mature trees. As the project continues down the Montrose Boulevard to US 59, hundreds of trees are at risk, including century-old oaks. Most Montrose residents and business owners don't know about the project or don't realize the heavy impact the project would have on the trees. Please help this organization demand that this project be paused until true community input can happen and a tree-preserving alternative plan can be developed. There's a table in Channing Hall where you can ask questions after the service. Those in our sanctuary will find the instructions for text giving in your order of service next to the name of the shared offering recipient, and those watching the live stream will see the instructions on your screen. Our regular Sunday morning offering collection invites us to weave a tapestry of love and action. We ask you to give generously. An offering will now be gratefully received.
From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live.
Please join with me in the words to dedicate our offering found in your order of service. To the work of this church, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives, and these are our offerings.
Our first reading is from Lakota Woman by Mary Crow Dog, also known as Mary Bravebird. Our land itself is a legend. The fight for our land is at the core of our existence, as it has been for the last 200 years. Once the land is gone, then we are gone too. The Sioux used to keep winter counts, picture writings on buffalo skin which told our people's story from year to year. Well, the whole country is one vast winter count. You can't walk a mile without coming to some family's sacred vision hill, to the ancient Sundance Circle, an old battleground, a place where something worth remembering happened. Mostly a death, a proud death or a drunken death. We are a great people for dying. It's a good day to die. That's our old battle cry. But the land with its tar paper shacks and outdoor privies, not one of them straight, but all leaning this way or that way, is also a land to live on. A land for good times and telling jokes and talking of great deeds done in the past. But you can't live forever off the deeds of Sitting Bull or Crazy Horse. You can't wear their eagle feathers, freeload off their legends. You have to make your own legends now. It isn't easy. Here ends the first reading.
The second reading is also from Lakota Woman by Mary Crow Dog. I do not consider myself a radical or revolutionary. It is white people who put such labels on us. All we ever wanted was to be left alone, to live our lives as we see fit. We govern ourselves in reality and not just on paper, to have our rights respected. If that is revolutionary, then I'm sure I fit that description. Actually, I have a great yearning to lead a normal, peaceful life. Normal in the Sioux sense. I could have accepted our flimsy shack, our smelly outhouse, and our poverty, but only on my terms. Yes, I would have accepted poverty, dignified, uninterfered with poverty, but not the drunken, degrading, and humiliating poverty we had to endure. But normality was a long time in coming. Even now, I don't have the peace that I crave. Here ends the second reading.
And now I invite you to open your hymnals. You don't have to turn the pages too far. To 1001. Please rise in body or spirit as we sing breaths.
Voices heard, 'tis the ancestors' breath in the voice of the
Anime, everything and nothing changes. You are the shimmering young woman who found her voice when you were warned to be silent or have your body cut away from you like an elegant weed. You are the one whose spirit is present in the dappled stars. Joy Harjo, former United States Poet Laureate and member of the Muskogee Nation, wrote those words about Anime Picto Aquash. Anime was a Micmac from Nova Scotia. A member of the American Indian movement, she was involved in the 1973 Wounded Knee incident at the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. She was murdered in December 1975. Anime was Mary Bravebird's friend. Mary Bravebird, also known as Mary Crow Dog, is the focus of this month's Lives of the Spirit programming. She was a Lakota writer and community leader. Like her friend, she grew up in grinding poverty in an indigenous community far from urban centers. Like her friend, she was part of the American Indian movement. Like her friend, she was at Wounded Knee. Unlike her friend, she survived the violence of the 1970s and died of natural causes. So this morning we lift up Mary Bravebird as a spiritual activist and not her friend Anime because she was someone who survived. She was someone who survived. You are the one whose spirit is present in the dappled stars. It seems right to begin a sermon on Bravebird with an invocation of her friend. Bravebird's perspective on spirituality is that it was fundamentally a communal affair. We exist, she understood, first as members of a community, and only secondarily as individuals. We exist, she saw, first as part of all being, and then second as ourselves. We are shaped by the history, the story of our peoples, and only secondarily our own biographies and experiences. Whiteness, European culture, she knew, was built upon inverting these truths. This old way, which was built on the close-knit clan, she wrote, was what the missionary and government agent set out to destroy so that the government could turn indigenous peoples into white people. The objective, as one Secretary of Interior claimed, was to teach Anime Aquash, Mary Bravebird, and others native to this continent to learn, and this is a quote, the benefits of wholesome selfishness without which high civilization is impossible. The benefits of wholesome selfishness. The philosopher William James famously defined religion as the feelings, acts, and experiences of individuals in their solitude in relation to the divine. But Mary Bravebird took exactly the opposite view. Religion and spirituality, as she understood them, were things that could only be engaged in collectively. They are found in shared ritual. They are experienced in the long dead voices, or the voices of long dead relatives talking to me, she wrote. It is when the voice of the drum is the drumbeat in my heart, she observed. It is what affirms and reaffirms that we are part of the earth and that the earth is in me and I in it. The earth is in me and I in it. The benefits of wholesome selfishness, the dominant strains of European culture and European religion or at least the various forms of Trinitarian Christianity, which make up the majority of it, are built upon a different system. Crudely put, much of European culture is organized, as anthropologist David Graeber noted, on constantly squabbling for advantage. Coarsely stated, a lot of European religion is devoted to individual, not communal salvation. To study Mary Bravebird is to encounter a different view. And here I must offer a confession. An honest engagement with her spiritual activism is very hard. Over the course of the sermon series, we've been exploring the lives and thought of some people who combined mysticism with social activism. And in that definition of mysticism, we followed the lead of Howard Thurman, who told us that the mystic is someone who discovers within their own experience something that opens up to the infinite. The infinite in the particular, I've alternately phrased it. The challenge with encountering the infinite in the particular, or the general in the specific, if you prefer, in the life and writing of Mary Bravebird, is that it demands a reckoning with a fundamental reality about the United States that generally gets ignored in all of our economic, political, and religious discourse. It's something that just doesn't get talked about all that much in public, especially in a state like Texas, where it's now almost against the law to teach actual history in the public schools. And that something can be summed up in a single word: genocide. Listen to what the historian Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz had to say about the matter, and this is a long quote, but it's important. U.S. history cannot be understood without dealing with the genocide that the United States committed against indigenous peoples. From the colonial period through the founding of the United States and continuing into the 21st century. This has entailed torture, terror, massacres, systematic military occupations, removals of indigenous peoples from their ancestral territories, and removals of indigenous children to military-like boarding schools. U.S. history cannot be understood without dealing with the genocide that the United States committed against indigenous people. As an engagement with Mary Bravebird, Anna Mae Quash, Joy Harjo, or any other indigenous spiritual activist must include, for someone of European descent must begin with, an acknowledgement that the United States was founded upon genocide. It must also contain a recognition that in many ways the nation's genocidal practices continue. I am Mary Bravebird. After I had my baby during the siege of Wounded Knee, they gave me a special name, Oktikwa Win, brave woman, and fastened an eagle plume in my hair, singing Braveheart songs for me. I am a Sioux woman. That is not easy. I had my first baby during a firefight, with the bullets crashing through one wall and coming out through the other. Those are the words that Mary Bravebird chose to begin her 1990 memoir, Lakota Woman. We'll return to them, but first, U.S. history cannot be understood without dealing with the genocide that the United States committed against indigenous peoples. Yet portions of the historical profession and many political authorities who seek to regulate them and control the national narrative try to deny this reality. A couple of years ago, I had my own experience with how this works when an anonymous peer reviewer objected to one of my scholarly manuscripts. I had used the word genocide in too casual of a manner, they claimed, when I attempted to describe the federal government's policies under Andrew Jackson towards the nation's the continent's indigenous peoples. The reviewer seemed to think that my choice of wording was somehow irresponsible because, while thousands of indigenous people perished during the Jackson administration, some of them survived. For my part, I was simply following the lead of indigenous studies scholars like Dunbar Ortiz and activists like Mary Bravebird, who are clear on the point. Dunbar Ortiz details through her work the ways in which the actions of the federal government over time have constituted genocide. She bases her claim on the 1948 United Nations Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. It reads in part that the act of genocide is committed with the intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. And she details in her scholarship how across the centuries the federal, state, and governments and their colonial predecessors have attempted to obliterate the indigenous nations of the continent. Bravebird, for her part, recognized she had an urge to procreate, as if driven by a feeling that I personally had to make up for the genocide suffered by our people. The reason she had 6 children, she records in her memoirs, included the reality that her older sister, Barbara, was sterilized against her will by a white doctor and unable to have any of her own children. The practice of forced sterilization, a certain act of genocide, was propagated by the Bureau of Indian Affairs until the 1970s. The babies that Bravebird bore were part of her opposition to that genocidal practice. Our nation was born in genocide, observed Martin Luther King Jr. I am a Sioux woman. That is not easy, wrote Mary Bravebird. Lifting up her spiritual activism, asking how she might serve as a guide to the questions, what is the good life? When do you know you've been living it? What models should we follow as we seek to live into it? Requires an honest admissions like Martin King's. That is not easy. You are the one whose spirit is present in the dappled stars. Bravebird was part of a generation who sought to rekindle traditional Sioux practices as an act of resistance to generations of genocide. In the 19th century, her people were, as she remembered, driven into reservations, fenced in, and forced to give up everything that had given meaning to their life. Their horses, their hunting, their arms, everything. But, she wrote, under the long snows of despair, the little spark of our ancient beliefs and pride kept glowing, just barely sometimes, waiting for a warm wind to blow the spark into a flame again. Bravebird was someone who was responsible for kindling that spark back into a roaring fire. She's not a household name, so let me tell you a little bit about her. She was born in 1954 on the Rosebud Indian Reservation in South Dakota. Given the name Mary Ellen Moore Richard at birth, her father was of mixed European and indigenous descent. Her mother was a full-blood Brule Sioux. Her father abandoned the family shortly after her birth, and so she grew up in a family that contained her mother, an abusive stepfather, and 5 siblings. A 6th had died as an infant, and her grandparents. They're the ones who took primary responsibility for raising her and connecting her with the Sioux traditions. They provided her with a loving environment and protected her from white cruelty. She was profoundly influenced by them until she was taken away to a boarding school around the age of 10. There, she was brutalized. The experience was so traumatic that she thought it was almost impossible to explain. She likened an attempt to describe what she underwent at the boarding school as hard as the victims of Nazi concentration camps, trying to tell average middle-class Americans what their experience had been like. The analogy is not hyperbole. It's one of the horrors of history that the Nazis based their anti-Semitic racial laws upon race laws and federal Indian law in particular in the United States. Kill the Indian to save the man was the sometime unofficial slogan of such places. I cannot call them schools, like the one where Brave Bird was forced to spend her adolescence. The boarding school did not succeed in killing the Sioux in her. She left and joined the American Indian movement while still a teenager. If you've not heard of it, it started in 1968 out of a coalition of indigenous people from many different communities. It brought together those living in the cities, people who had been forced from their land, with those living on reservations in an effort to revitalize indigenous culture and force the federal government to recognize indigenous rights. It was and is a religiously inspired organization opposed to genocide. Its members were targeted by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, COINTELPRO, a government program designed to infiltrate and disrupt liberation movements, weighed heavily on it. Hundreds of its activists were probably murdered by, at the behest of, or with the complicity of FBI agents, though the actual death count is not possible to know. Many had their deaths ruled as a result of accidents, or was, as initially the case of Annamea Quash, exposure. Her body was found frozen solid, though she died with a bullet lodged in her head. She was probably the victim of what's called bad jacketing, the practice of the FBI that they used to destroy the American Indian movement by sowing distrust amongst the organization's leadership through falsely implying that particular individuals were informants. Annamea, a young, strong-hearted woman, was a powerful leader within AIM, and in the months preceding her death, many rumors circulated about her potential betrayal of the movement. I am a Sioux woman. That is not easy, wrote Brave Bird. She did not think of herself as a radical or a revolutionary. She and her people just wanted to be left alone, to live our lives as we see fit, to govern ourselves in reality and not just on paper. To govern ourselves, this meant a demand that the federal government abide by the 1868 Treaty of Fort Laramie and respect indigenous rights to the land and political and religious autonomy. The land was key. As Brave Bird put it, our land itself is a legend. The fight for our land is at the core of our existence, as it has been for 200 years. Once the land is gone, we are gone too. She wrote those words in 1990. They could have been written yesterday. As anyone who paid attention to the 2016 events at Standing Rock knows, the struggle over indigenous land continues. Our land itself is a legend. You have to make your own legends now, she understood. And as part of AIM, she made some of those legends. In 1972, she took part in the Trail of Broken Treaties and, along with other members of AIM, occupied the Bureau of Indian Affairs headquarters in Washington, D.C. In 1973, she was part of the occupation of Wounded Knee, an effort to rid the Pine Ridge Reservation of a corrupt tribal president who subscribed to the beliefs of the John Birch Society, favored tribal members with European blood over those who were full-blooded Sioux, and supported the genocidal policies of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Wounded Knee was one of the pivotal moments of the 20th century's Indigenous and U.S. history. It involved the occupation by AIM of activists of a town that was the site of a notorious massacre in 1890. The deaths of more than 300 people there at the close of the 19th century is often thought to mark the end of indigenous autonomy in the United States. The 1973 occupation was meant to be, amongst other things, a symbolic rekindling of resistance. Brave Bird was there for most of it. She arrived at the town several months pregnant. She surrendered a few days after giving birth. While in Wounded Knee, she organized the community. She connected to traditional Sioux religious practices and dodged bullets from federal officials and supporters of the corrupt Pine Ridge president. She also deepened her relationship with the man who eventually became her husband, the traditional medicine man, Leonard Crow Dog. Leonard Crow Dog. This is a sermon about Mary Bravebird and not him. Even a brief description of his life would take us far beyond our time this morning. But it is worth noting that he is responsible for rekindling, for turning sparks into flames of numerous indigenous practices amongst AIM's members. He spread the use of peyote as medicine for communing with all being. He incorporated the sweat lodge, the Sundance, and the vision quest into his political work. Though he never used a gun, he was jailed for 2 years. He had been sentenced to many more for supposedly being involved in violence. You are the one whose spirit is present in the dappled stars. The legacy of Leonard Crow Dog, the anime Pictou Aquash, Mary Bravebird, and the American Indian movement is hard to overstate. Their generation of activists managed to overturn the federal government's official policy of genocide. Indian boarding schools, with their practices as difficult to speak of as Nazi concentration camps, have largely been disbanded. Indigenous children are now able to be raised in their own communities. Traditional religious practices are no longer outlawed. Indigenous languages, once illegal to speak, are experiencing a resurgence and taught in schools. The noted legal scholar and member of the Eastern Shawnee tribe, Robert Miller, has argued that of all the periods of United States history, this is the best one for indigenous people. Anime, everything and nothing changes. That is not to say that life for most indigenous people on the continent remains anything other than difficult. Indigenous women are murdered at shocking rates. Life expectancies for indigenous peoples of all genders is just slightly more than 65 years, lower than that of people in Rwanda. Despite this, AIM's victories were nonetheless significant. I am a Sioux woman. That is not easy, Mary Bravebird told us. She herself died of natural causes in her late 50s. But she survived until then, unlike her friend Anna Mae and so many other indigenous women of her generation. And that is why we have her story and not theirs. Her spiritual teaching I find almost impossible to distill into something digestible on a Sunday morning. To understand her, we would have to immerse ourselves in a cosmology and a land for which most of us is unfamiliar. I am unversed in the Sundance. I've never taken peyote. It's not for me to explain such practices to you. The fight for our land is at the core of our existence. And we live here in Houston on land taken from indigenous communities like the Karakawa, Karakana, the Wochlikan, and the Sana, not in the land of the Sioux. The meaning of the land that is to be found here is different than the meaning of the land found in Pine Ridge. But there are two things from Mary Brave Bird that can help us answer our own questions about the nature of the good life. First, we will only survive together. We are part of a community first and individuals second. That community must include the land on which we live. The earth is in me, and I in it. And second, if we want to have an honest relationship with the land, with each other and with the country and with the spirit and all being, then we must face history. Not the pleasant history that denies genocide, not the easy history that the Texas legislature wishes upon us, but the real history that acknowledges it. And then with people like Mary Brave Bird, who survived, tries to move forward. You are the one whose spirit is present in the dappled stars. It is not easy. But still, knowing it is not easy, I invite the congregation to say, Amen.
I invite you to open your hymnals to number 1007. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my heart, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing in my mind, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing in my heart.
Please join me with words found in your order of service as we extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Life goes on. That's how Mary Bravebird ended her memoir. We close our service with those simple words which meant much to her. Life goes on. For her, life went on, finding spirit in all, rekindling her traditions, resisting the ongoing brutality of this nation's government, and rebuilding her community until she rejoined the land from which she came. Someday, soon or long, each of us will rejoin the land from which we came. Until we do, let us remember that we are part of a community first, and individuals second, each a portion of all being in and of the earth. That it might be so, I say, go in peace, go in love. May our lives be a blessing. Amen. Thank you for joining us. We want to know who you are and would love to connect with you. Please fill out the link to the online attendance form, and if you are on YouTube, click like and subscribe. If you're interested in joining our congregation, email us at membership@firstuuhouston.org. Thanks so much.